Hello and welcome back to the Raptors Report podcast. I am Julian, and sitting next to me, at least in spirit, is Steve, and we are deep in the heart of summer. We are approaching training camp, but we are not really that close to it. We have a couple of really interesting things to talk about today on the broadcast. I'm sure that most of you are well aware of the Kawhi Leonard saga that has broken the internet, especially regarding the, Raptors sphere, broken the NBA. It's gone viral. The Pablo Torre investigative journalism that he did, which is very impressive. Obviously, he is a talented sports journalist. He broke that story, and it has been the talk of the town. And we will be discussing that. We're going to go into how it's related to the Toronto Raptors. There's some very interesting tie-ins that you may not have heard about that we will be discussing. But there's also we'll talk about it generally too, not just through the lens of the Toronto Raptors. And the second thing that we're going to be talking about is Mamu Mania. And there was another chapter in Sandro Mamukelashvili's very busy summer with Team Georgia, because they were able to defeat a very worthy opponent in FIBA Eurobasket, Team France. They were able to advance to the round of 8. And so, big ups to the newest Toronto Raptor. And lastly, we're going to be discussing Immanuel Quickley and what Sam Vecenie has to say about him. Sam Vecenie, obviously, one of the biggest names when it comes to the NBA draft. He's a very good scout. I really respect his analysis. And he did a redraft, and you'll be surprised to know where Immanuel Quickley went in that redraft, and then what they had to say about him as a player, because I think both, it's kind of a little bit of whiplash there. So you don't want to miss that. That'll be at the end of the episode. Steve, how you doing?
I'm good. Honestly, it's started to be that slog part of the off season where you're starting to count down the days, you're looking for updates and anything, and then out of nowhere, Pablo drops that, it's awesome, and it's nice to see his name getting out there more. I've liked his work for a few years. He did a really good piece on Matt Ishbia before, kind of about his whole wholesale real estate business and everything. Is really interesting stuff with that as well. So that's been fun to dig into that. And we're scraping the barrel for Raptors stuff, but I think we've got a couple of good things to talk about today.
Yeah, no kidding. Obviously, the summer, it's a lot slower, but we were kind of rescued this week in terms of a topic because, this Kawhi news is so huge. And obviously, there is a lot of scandal between the Toronto Raptors and the Clippers, a lot of bad blood. Obviously, the circumstances in which Kawhi left are extremely suspicious from a Toronto Raptors point of view. And so this is just more validation that, the Raptors got hosed real bad. But to go back to what you were saying about how, around the corner and looking at when the season starts, is that when you start to feel this is something that for someone like me who's been around for a very long time, an older gentleman such as myself, is that as soon as the weather starts to get a little cooler after the summer is over, but as it starts to chill, get a little colder and colder, I start getting more excited because I know that the NBA is just around the corner and I'm able to, partake in my favorite hobby. So just wanted to share that before we get into things. Let's talk Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard, one of the greatest Raptors of all time. I'm not going to call him the GOAT. I know all of the media outside of Toronto, all of the media, the national media is like, this guy is the best Raptor ever. And we know that even though he's probably the most talented Raptor, especially when we got him in his prime, there's really not much competition there in terms of greatness. He's probably at his peak. That 1 year, he was the greatest Toronto Raptor in that period. But of course,
definitely,
you got to give it to Kyle Lowry.
There's
Yeah.
one player that Kawhi tried to hand off the Finals MVP trophy to. He literally tried to force it into Kyle's hands and said, "No, you got to hold it. You deserve it too," or something like that, right? So
Yeah.
I think
Foreshadowing,
even
maybe.
yeah, I think even Kawhi recognizes Kyle's greatness. So, but definitely the highest peak by far, and because of that, I'll always have that layer of respect and rooting for him. And I know he's gone through so many injuries and everything ever since. I mean, before Toronto, after Toronto, if you want to say that our medical staff gave him the healthiest season ever and that's why he was able to achieve greatness, I mean, I won't fight you on it. But yeah, I mean, I'll always root for him. So this was pretty shocking to say the least. I think there's probably 100 players I would have guessed before him. And then people brought up the Uncle Dennis angle and stuff again. So maybe pieces are starting to fall into place.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we got to take a look at some of the more scintillating details of this Kawhi Leonard debacle. And let me just see if I can get this going here. Oops, no, no. There we go. So take a look at this headline and tell me if this is not the funniest thing you've ever seen. Kawhi Leonard's uncle, obviously the aforementioned Uncle Dennis, asked for ownership stake in Toronto Maple Leafs in 2019. And this is from the Dallas Hoops Journal, Ashish Mathur. So let's take a look. NBA star Kawhi Leonard's uncle, Dennis Robertson, asked for an ownership stake in Toronto Maple Leafs in 2019, according to Bruce Arthur of The Star. Toronto, you know what? Why don't we go to that article? Why are we reading the secondary source here when we can just go straight to the, yeah, I like Bruce. So I will, give him a hit here. Yeah, he goes into the Pablo Torre finds out here, company insiders. Hold on, I haven't read this part of the article. So
Well, what I believe is that it was after he asked for ownership of Raptors, of like the Raptors, and then when they said no, I think he was like, "Okay, give me some ownership of the Leafs." And then I think it was
here we
worded
go. Here we
as,
go. Here we go. Yeah,
yeah.
sorry to cut you off. Okay.
No, go ahead.
Sources in Toronto say in one meeting, Uncle Dennis asked for an ownership stake in the Toronto Maple Leafs because that way he wasn't asking for a piece of the Raptors. Ooh, very smart, Uncle Dennis. Oh, so crafty. It was politely explained to him that both teams were owned by the same company and that the request was impossible. So, his uncle has, the big money signs in his eyes. He saw the cash cow that is, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the money printing machine, kind of like the New York Knicks in a way that it doesn't matter how much they lose or how often they get eliminated in the playoffs. There is a market and they will continue to ride that fandom for all that it's worth. So very smart guy. Anyway, it just goes on to say just the basically that the league couldn't find anything. Yeah, I'm sure that they did a really exhaustive job trying to find out whether Steve Ballmer was breaking the rules. And maybe we can talk about that a little bit because I don't know whether they are going to get punished. So
Honestly,
before I'll go to you, I just want to say that like Adam Silver he started his career with a big move. So obviously the Donald Sterling, or what is it? Is it Donald Sterling?
I
Who's
think
the
it was
owner?
Yeah,
Former or owner of the Clippers?
it was Donald Sterling. Yeah.
Donald, just the first name, but it was Donald Sterling. He threw the book at him and basically forced him to sell the team, and he was persona non grata. So he started on a good note in terms of being sort of a disciplinarian and holding people to account. Although I think that just the general consensus and sort of his power within the league and his status as a person is not even close to Steve Ballmer. Steve Ballmer is one of the wealthiest people in the world. He has incredible, clout in the United States. in my opinion, not well earned clout. I mean, what he was uh, Bill Gates's roommate, and that's kind of how he got into the whole Microsoft thing. But he's amassed a fortune. He's a very powerful person,
Hmm.
and you have to imagine that taking that guy down a peg is a considerably more risky proposition for the league than going against a guy that everybody kind of hated and was a notorious cheapskate and really was screwing that franchise over. On the flip side, like off the court, I mean, Steve Ballmer has a decent reputation. He's not, if he is a racist, he's hiding it very well. And if he has, major scandals outside of this, he's done the homework to keep it under wraps. But the idea that, oh God, my train of thought is just completely off the rails here. Essentially, what I'm saying is that it's going to be harder to take him down. And
Yeah.
since the point where Donald Sterling got kind of kiboshed by the league, he's really seemed soft. Has that been your impression of Adam Silver?
I would say very much, especially with like player discipline. There's a lot of players that have done some terrible things that faced barely any discipline on it. Now, they still forced out Robert Sarver for having a toxic workplace, like Phoenix's old owner. But again, that's the owners kind of coming together like this guy's hurting the product, this guy's hurting our bank accounts, push him out, right? Now, as you're saying, in terms of how much harder it would be to punish somebody like Ballmer, I think the perspective on it is that I think he's like either 98 times or 100 times wealthier than Donald Sterling was when he owned the Clippers. So 100 times a 1.5 billionaire, $150 billion. He's the eighth richest person in the world. So obviously he's built his own stadium, which most people have to appeal to the city to get. And he just built that with his own, he wrote the check for it. There's reasons that he benefits the league. So that's my fear in it, is that they
Yeah.
think, oh, we don't want to tick this guy off. But I think in the end, it would be, they probably work with him on a punishment that seems like a punishment if they're going to punish him for anything. And it'll be, what's it called, an Alfred plea, where it's like you admit that you can't prove it, that you didn't do it. Like
Oh,
you're like, oh, you can make me look guilty, but I won't admit that I actually did it.
yeah.
So you kind of take a bit of a punishment for it. I think it'll be something like that, where it won't harm his reputation that much, and it won't harm his standing too much, and it's kind of a slap on the wrist, and then the league can go, look, we are keeping everyone accountable.
Yeah. That sounds pretty reasonable in terms of a take where it to me, I mean, from I think pretty much everybody's perspective, this seems pretty cut and dry. Like this, it seems like they've got them dead to rights. I did listen to, there was like a debate between Pablo Torre, the journalist who broke the story, and Mark Cuban, who is on Team Ballmer. And essentially, the gist of that argument was that, oh, Steve Ballmer, if he really wanted to do this, he would have paid Kawhi under the table instead of through this method. And if he knew that this is the way that they paid him, then they would have cleaned it up before the bankruptcy filing where all of these details went public. And Pablo rightfully said, like, basically the original thing, trusting these con men who ran this aspiration. Like, if you're not familiar with the story, essentially Steve Ballmer, or at least the cover story is that Steve Ballmer was kind of conned by these two guys who ran this carbon capture to, you know how carbon credits work, where essentially you sell basically goodwill, where you're planting all of these trees to make up for a company that is polluting the environment. I don't know if
And
it's that ethical,
well, how
but
how it specifically fits in with the Intuit Dome is his whole claim that this was going to be a net zero building,
right.
right? So I think the plan was to kind of offset with whatever aspiration was offering, whether it was, oh, we plant a tree and that counts as offsetting the
Yeah.
carbon that you've put in. Now you can say carbon neutral. I don't know exactly how it was going to work out, but I feel like it was factored into that because I think there's savings and stuff in California when you're building as net zero.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like incentive for him to reach that. So I think maybe that's where that fits in.
Yeah, no, that sounds correct. And the idea, though, that he put very rightly, Pablo Torre, to argue against Mark Cuban's line of reasoning, well, why didn't they clean it up beforehand? It's like, well, why did he trust these guys in the first place? Right? Was that part of a master plan that he should have figured out that these guys were conning him, etc.? The media and people like to treat these billionaires as if they are, these infallible super geniuses that are just, running society, thinking 5 steps ahead, etc. When I think that it's been conclusively proven, especially when it comes to running a basketball team, like these guys, a lot of the time get in over their head and they make mistakes. So I could easily see Steve Ballmer just screwing up and forgetting that this is the avenue through which he paid Kawhi Leonard outside of the cap, circumvented the cap and just forgot to clean up the mess that he made, right? So Pablo Torre just basically said that. He said, basically what I'm thinking, that I'm assuming here, is that there were 2 mistakes. The first mistake was trusting these guys. The second mistake was not cleaning up the mess before, the bankruptcy filings went public. And there's another interesting thing. So one of the things about this story is that Kawhi Leonard was paid an exorbitant amount of money. And this is really the crux of the case. Because endorsement deals, like sometimes you don't get like a great buy-in from the star. They said 28 million, the original story. It's since been found out that he was paid even more than that. So $48 million. And then on top of that, when you look at what Aspiration, the company that went bankrupt, was paying other stars, this is where it gets really suspicious. So let's take a look at this article here. This is on Pro Football Network. Basically, so Sam Amick and Dave DeFore, Torre broke down the stunning details of Leonard's earnings from Aspiration. So one of the funniest parts about this whole thing is that you had Leonardo DiCaprio, you had Robert Downey Jr., you had Drake, some of the most charismatic communicators in public in our country, and the guy making more than 4 times as much as anybody, including Cindy Crawford, Orlando Bloom, blah, 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 was the worst of all the athletes in that regard. So talking about how Kawhi is not this charismatic superstar that can, talk his way into any conversation and like inspires people through his words. He's an on-court guy, and that's pretty much it. So he's being paid 4 times as much as A-listers. Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert Downey Jr. Say what you will about Kawhi Leonard and his skill, but in terms of stardom, those guys are like the guys that you would want to represent your brand. Mm-hmm. Why was he being paid 4 times as much as those guys?
I mean, and like, what did he deliver in return?
Nothing.
Like,
or there's Downey, a couple of, wasn't it? He didn't do nothing, but he did like such a minuscule amount that it's like almost laughable that he was paid that amount.
All I've seen is that there's some bobbleheads with the Aspiration logo on it, which could just be team sponsored stuff, right? So like Robert Downey Jr. did a whole commercial for it. Like all these guys did real commercials, real promotions, all that stuff, and Kawhi didn't. And this is where I push back against people going, oh, I mean, Kawhi probably didn't. He just signed it and didn't worry about it and didn't think about it, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, he's done promotions his whole career. He's done brand deals. He's done all this stuff. He knows he signs for New Balance for way less money than he made off of Aspiration, and he has to do commercials. Yep. He has to do talking bits, everything.
Photo shoots, blah, blah, blah.
He is not so naive that he thinks that $28 million is, oh, okay, cool. You don't want me to do anything? Perfect. Great deal. Like, you're telling me that he finds a suitcase of Mark Bills and just goes, oh, lucky me. Perfect. Like, yeah, it doesn't make sense. I can't see him as some kind of infantile, naive person in this that some people are hoping that he is, I guess. And they're trying to pin it all on everybody else but him. I feel like if this happened, if it's really the way it is and there's no real promotion about it, I mean, come on, he
Yeah.
has to cop some responsibility.
It's sleazy, it's under the table, it's very, yeah, it's not a flattering look,
Hmm.
definitely. And I am wondering, like, obviously, you wonder about the Clippers, what kind of penalty they will get, if any. And also Kawhi, like, as you're
Yeah.
saying, like, this is a willing, that, like, his contract could be voided. That would
Yep.
be pretty big for him. And honestly, like, that huge deal, the fact that they have his bird rights, they can sign him over the cap. Not a lot of teams are going to be able to do that. And with
Yep.
his injury history, are they going to be willing to kind of mold the franchise around him the way he deserves? So that could be
Yeah.
a big blow for him if it comes out that he partook, if he took part
Yeah.
in this whole thing, if they do some actual investigation and uncover some things that we haven't heard yet.
Which is now is Uncle Dennis's chance to finally pay Kawhi back for all of the
Yeah,
little
jump on the
sweetener he's
grenade.
been getting on everything. That's exactly what he should do. He should be the fall guy. You know, everyone, all these rich people have a fall guy who go to jail for them, go to whatever for them. This is Uncle Dennis's shot to do that for him after he's tried to get jets
Yeah.
and
Well,
pieces of ownership and
he's gotten a
everything.
sweet ride from his nephew.
Yeah.
With that said, let's try and tie this back to the Toronto Raptors, because like we talked about how the Toronto Raptors were hard done by, but we didn't really talk about like will this have any impact on the Raptors? Like, will the Raptors be given any compensation for Kawhi leaving in this way? And from where I'm sitting, at least if this is not the tip of the iceberg, if this is like kind of the totality of the evidence, unfortunately, I don't think that the Toronto Raptors are going to be getting anything, because the way that this happened is that all of this, like the money is traced back to 2021, which is
Yeah.
obviously after the Raptors left him. But in terms of like, maybe it can't be proven that they got, like they should get something for this. Like, this is pretty conclusive, maybe not evidence, but this really does show that the Raptors did get screwed. And it's not just like some baseless conspiracy theory anymore that there was this deal that he would get with the Clippers that he wouldn't get here because they were a slimier than the Raptors and they were able to give him this other thing. It's just very obvious that if this is what they were doing at this point, you got to imagine that there was some quid pro
Yeah.
quo where they said, okay, we can give you this at this point, or they worked
Definitely.
something out under the table. And
Oh.
what do you
I mean,
think?
if they did this much to re-sign him to a team-friendly deal, if they did whatever they did this, imagine how much they did to drag him there in the first place. And like, if that's the case and they were playing dirty, I mean, like, I guess you have some semblance of, okay, well, there was nothing that we could have ever done. You're betting against the eighth richest guy in the world. You simply, I mean, we've got billionaire owners and everything. We've got telecom companies that run our country that own the team, but it's not competing with what this guy can give him. He can give him coming home, and he can give him all sorts of potential under, and even just over the table sponsors. We know that there's more in LA than Toronto, even though Toronto takes care of their players very well in terms of sponsorships. Role players get sponsorships here, but it's just, it really feels like there was never a chance. So I mean, I had already emotionally put that to bed time ago. So this whole thing is picking at a scar a little bit, but
Yeah.
I mean, what can you do, right?
I think everybody really kind of was just hoping that, the payday had come. The finally the Raptors were going to get, the goodies that
Yeah,
were promised from the Clippers. But,
yeah,
even the goodies, like, look at what would you get from them? It's like, suing somebody that doesn't have anything.
yeah,
Like, you're going to be opening up their house and looking through the drawers and there's just
yeah.
nothing in there. They don't really have any draft picks to speak of.
No,
Like, if they do get a draft pick from them, it's going to be well down the road. Anywho, this is just, as you said, like picking at an old scab, reigniting that old flame that you had in the past and remembering how good things were.
Yeah.
But yeah, this, of course, this is comeuppance. This is Schadenfreude. You are getting you get to kick the guy who stole your girl, I guess, to
Yeah.
use a tired metaphor. Is there anything else that you can think of? Well, there's one more thing that I want to talk about because we discussed it prior to the pod, and I think that it is kind of like an admission, maybe not of guilt, but just like a wink towards, like a nod towards knowing that this is like an underhanded deal, is that when he went on, like after Pablo Torre uncovered this story, while everybody was watching football and while, it wasn't a big story, he went on ESPN and tried to do damage control. The Steve Ballmer, that is. And he spoke, was it with Ramona Shelburne?
Ramona Shelburne, yeah.
Yeah, who is, one of the Lakers beat writers, a LA journalist. And she asked him a couple of questions. A lot of them were, puffball, like easy answer questions. But there was one that stuck out to me where I thought that this was kind of just like she caught him in a place where he didn't exactly know how to spin it. And where she asked, hey, did Kawhi or his representation ever ask you for something that would be considered, circumventing the salary cap? And as we all know, there is much ink spilled about how Uncle Dennis has gone around and kind of asked for anything that isn't nailed down. Like, can I have this? Can I have that? This, that, right? And so knowing this and knowing that he would not want to, like, perjure himself or like get caught in a lie, he couldn't say no. So he was kind of searching for words that would imply that, that everybody, he basically said, I think if I could paraphrase here, he said, Kawhi is very well managed and his team knows the rules of what you're allowed to ask for and what you aren't, which is just the most nothing burger answer you could possibly give to that question, which is like, I know the rules. And it's like, so did you do something untowards? Well, I know the rules. It's like, it's not an answer. It's basically an admission that, yes, Kawhi's representation, aka Uncle Dennis, probably went around and asked him for all of these different things. And when somebody's asking you for that kind of stuff and you've got the money, like Steve Ballmer, money is no object, you're probably going to be looking for places and ways that you can get that money to them that without raising alarm bells. And which is what kind of we're seeing right now, allegedly.
Yeah.
Don't want to get in trouble. Okay.
Well, and
Go ahead.
one last thing I got on it. You remember Paul George trying to have his contract negotiation with the Clippers prior to moving on, right? And they didn't want to give him a lot of money and they were offering whatever. And then twice Paul George said, like either was on his podcast or to whoever, he said, all I want, just give me what Kawhi got. Just give me what Kawhi got.
Yeah.
And of course, we all took it as just
oh yes, the contract that he
the
got.
number and figure, right? But wouldn't it just be so funny if he's like, "Yeah, give me the tree money that Kawhi got. What are you doing?
Yeah,
Give me some of that under table tree money."
that is a very good point.
Yeah, right. And then the other thing that I saw somebody, I don't remember the name, maybe it's Swar Lasers, but one Raptor fan from Twitter saying that the 20 million in shares or something like that Kawhi got, basically Bomber overpaid for shares when he bought shares, so he paid $11 a share instead of 10.
Right.
So when he dumped 50 million into aspiration, and then they gave $20 million of shares or whatever back out to Kawhi, like basically Kawhi works out to
he
that
washed the money through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he would have put in 50 and it comes out as 48.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so the middleman gets the 2 million in between. Like
yeah.
It's way too logical where it's like, are you actually this dumb that you just did this very linear way?
Well,
and
it's not that dumb.
True.
If they cleaned, as Mark Cuban said, he
Yeah.
said, like, well, why didn't he clean it up afterwards? It's like the scene of a crime. You could be a mastermind, or you think you're a mastermind, and you leave behind a clue that ties you to the
Yep.
crime that's being committed. Like, you're absolutely correct that, like, in retrospect, it looks like, God, this is such a stupid way to
Yeah.
screw up. But in the flow of things, if the receipts were not found, it's
Hmm.
a genius way of doing it. You're just purchasing shares, and then they go in, like, the money washes through the shell corporation into the hands of the star that you need to give the money to.
Yep.
So it's like it's very interesting how these things work. And obviously, like, this, it's not far-fetched. Like, that's the thing about it, is that it's just so on the nose, and being like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, yep, that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I think, I mean, unless we're all kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop in this case, like, we're all waiting to see what the league is going to do, and like what the investigation yields. Like, maybe there's something else that they find, where if they do actual investigations here.
Well, they hired the legal teams or whatever that handled Sarver and Sterling, I believe. I think that's what they said. So uh, optically, they are taking it as seriously as the other two times that
It's
they
good.
booted an owner. So
That's good. That's
we'll
good. I
see.
like to hear that.
Because I also think that Silver does already made a fool of as well,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
So there's like a degree of that of like, okay, will he try to assert his power and be like, hey, look, like you have to listen to me to some extent. So I mean, yeah, we'll see. We're just waiting on that.
Yep. Anyhow, that the saga continues, and we'll obviously keep you guys updated. The next thing that we are going to be talking about is the Georgian national team, and I don't think that it's Georgia as a country is just like a blip in my psyche. Like, I have no thoughts about them, have no idea about their culture really. I'm not the most worldly person, but they're a small country in Europe, Eastern Europe, and they have been doing some pretty exciting stuff in this year's Eurobasket, partially propelled by one of their star players and the newest Toronto Raptor, Sandro Mamukelashvili. And he has had a good, I'm not going to say excellent, I'm not going to say like amazing superstar kind of performance there, but he has been good for the Georgian national team. And let me just quickly pull up this here, because I've got his stats for the tournament. I'll just quickly go over here. And as you can see, I've got the statistics for Sandro here. He is averaging 31 minutes a game, 14.2 points per game, 47.7 field goal percentage, 32% from three, 73% from the line, 7 rebounds, which is the highest on the Georgian national team, 3.3 assists, 1.2 stocks, almost 3 turnovers, and just a little bit over positive in plus minus. And so he has been good. He is one of the best players on the team. He plays a lot of minutes. They rely on his creation ability, and he's done some creation for the Georgian national team. He handles the ball a lot more than he would be asked to in the NBA because, you know, he's a skill player. And in the NBA, the highest level of competition, everybody gets bumped down a notch, where if you're the star on Team Georgia, you're the role player on the Toronto Raptors, right? So that is kind of how it works. It's a lower level competition generally on the world stage, especially Eurobasket instead of like the Olympics. But they're taking it super seriously, and they just bumped off one of the best teams in the world, Team France, an up-and-coming team that has like a lot of potential in the future. So Zachary Rizachet is playing for them. A guy who was like instrumental in defeating the Canadian national team is on that, Gerson Yabusele. they have some talent. They've got a lot of good players, and their stock, like their golden era, just kind of like Canada has a golden era. Obviously, Victor Wembanyama is not playing for them, going to be probably the best player in the world very shortly, but he's not playing for them. It doesn't really matter. They've got a lot of good players. Have you watched any of the games or what?
I haven't been able to actually watch them live. I've tried to watch like some playbacks of it, and I've watched like as many highlights and clips of it. I mean, him and Goga Batazde, that's some
Yeah.
pretty fun random basketball. But yeah, I mean, like obviously he's being asked to do a bit more than he would do with the Raptors, but it's nice to see some of that creation ability because depending on what he's going to be asked to do off the bench, he provides a lot more than somebody like Mobo, who he'd be fighting with minutes for. So uh, it's exciting to see in the least. And again, like yeah, this level of competition is a bit lower than the NBA, but it's also not starting lineup level. So he's going to be going against benches. It'll be a bit
Yeah.
closer to this. And again, yeah, France has a lot of players who are starters on their teams. The Rissache, Bilal Coulibaly didn't have a good tournament, but
No.
yeah, Yabusele, I mean, he played a lot for the Sixers last year. I
He
don't know
was
what
good.
his,
He's a good player. He's a good
yeah,
player. Like we saw it in the Olympics, he
hmm
kicked Canada's ass because their
yeah,
centers were all garbage.
yeah,
But like, yeah, they have a good team. And
yeah,
one thing that I've liked about Sandro is that, as you said, like he's a guy that can do a little something something. Like
hmm
he's got a bit of a handle. He is a kind of a versatile offensive player that isn't exactly like a lot of the other kind of stationary big shooters. And there's two things that I like about him is that the offensive versatility, being able to drive and shoot, and then the rebounding is
hmm
very, very big. And I'll get into that. But why don't we watch some clips? Because I've got a couple of clips here over their win in France. And we'll start one here. He does a good job of coming off of a screen here and then curling into the lane. So let's just take a look at that. And then, easy dunk. So we'll just play that one more time. So yeah, they have him run off of a screen, and he kind of catches Yabusele. I believe that's Yabusele there,
yeah,
staying high. And I think generally maybe they're just not expecting that type of burst, or maybe they're expecting him to sort of pop out and take the shot. But instead, he just goes straight to the rim. And I'm liking the point A to point B speed with the
yeah,
ball in his hands. It's not a complicated move by any stretch of the imagination. It's like a couple dribbles coming off of a screen. But I'm more impressed with just like the foot speed, just like right in and easy dunk, easy dunk. He had that nice dunk earlier in this competition where he kind of dunked over people, but this is kind of what he's been doing. So I wanted to show that one. He was also 3 for 8 from three in this game, but yeah, they didn't. I'm going through the highlights here. Then there was this one here. This is the one that I kind of was excited about. This is showing some pick and roll creation. So he's the ball handler here, as you can see, and then he just gets into the lane. So it's a nice crossover. Well, it's not really a crossover, but he goes right and then picks it up and goes left and finishes with the left. Nice, good-looking move, and he gets the and one. Last but not least, it's kind of like a whatever, but he gets the final dunk in the game, and yeah, they're celebrating in Georgia because they knocked off one of the favorites for the tournament. They were able to beat up the France. They went to the silver medal game in the Olympics, and Sandro has been a big part of that. So just wanted to show some of those highlights. But yeah, why don't we talk about kind of the importance of rebounding? So one of the things you might have seen, like we talked about it last episode, where we're talking about the backup center role and how he could figure into that. And one thing I want to pick your brain about is like, I know that a lot of people don't see him as a center, and it's true. He's not really a 5. But one thing I want to say, and I think, and I want to see if you agree, is that the way that it works when you go small is that you're not actually playing a center. So you have to take the idea of a center out of your brain. But one thing that's going to be really important is the fact that he can rebound. And so he had 11 rebounds against France, which is a lot. And he is averaging the most for that Georgian team. So 7 in 30 minutes, which is pretty good. I think that he can bring that to the Toronto Raptors, and that if he can rebound and shoot the ball a little bit, he's going to be an important piece of the bench. What do you say about that?
Oh, definitely. And like, okay, height wise, he still has 2 inches on CMB and Mobo, right? So I think he would figure in as the pseudo five, but exactly if you're going small, you don't really have a five. Um, like they're not really going to be in too many situations where the opponent's bench five is huge and able to beat up on them. He's a good rebounder, and Colin Murray-Boyles is a very good rebounder. So if they're sharing minutes on the floor, I don't think they're going to have any issue getting boards. And like Mobo's a decent rebounder too, but one of the standout skills of CMB is rebounding. So I would love to see that they're pairing together. That could be very interesting. And I mean, who knows what Shamshay figures in, considering
Right.
he's still such a prospect and everything. But he's their only like really big center who's close to any kind of traditional center size.
Yeah.
But when you look around the league at like opponents' backup fives, there's not too many that are so scary that it's like, oh, we're gonna get killed on this. It's like, okay, some teams they can throw out Luke Cornett or something like that,
Yeah.
but again, then you lose that matchup a little bit. You don't have to play traditionally. The
Yeah.
the the pick and roll element of his game is interesting. Him and Jamal Shed running a little bit of pick and roll, that could be
Pick and
interesting.
pop too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right? So yeah, I mean, I from what he's shown in this, like, I mean, I already figured after the signing, I was like, I think he's gonna be a guy that Darko likes, and I think he's gonna be. We're gonna see Mobo sitting on the bench a lot of times. He's gonna be having games where he doesn't really play at all. I think, right? Because I think CMB gets the minutes, and I think that Mamu will be a guy that Darko likes. Of course, unless the wheels fall off, and then he'll
Yeah.
be a guy that they probably get out of there. But rebound, keep your hands up on D and stuff. I think his size, even though he's only like 6'9", whatever, 6 and 9 and a
Yeah.
half, that's superior to a lot of the other guys on the bench. So I think that alone will get him a lot of those minutes, right?
Yeah, and one of the things, yeah, the size is definitely an issue off the bench. Like people are seeing a lot of guys who are similar size, 6'9". Mamu, it says like 6'10".
Hmm.
I'm thinking he's more like a 6'9". He's also kind of like CMB is like a stockier, like wider shoulders.
Yeah.
But the thing is that like when you play small, the idea is not to protect the basket.
Hmm.
So he is not a basket protector. In fact, he has no blocks in this entire tournament, which is, maybe not the best sign, but
Yeah.
it kind of like Goga is their center there, and he's being asked to play the, power forward position. And the idea off of the bench, I think, is kind of what they've done in the past, especially with Nick Nurse when they were playing Precious Achua at center. Yes, he could protect the basket a little bit, but they never really tried to protect the basket all that
Yeah.
much. What they were trying to do was keep the other team on the outside and then win the possession more. And the way
Hmm.
that they did that was by trying to force turnovers. And it was like it was such a crazy scheme to watch. Like it was interesting from like a mad scientist perspective where you're like watching like some weird experiment. Like the other team would like be shooting like 60% from the field and have 20 turnovers, and the Raptors, they'd be shooting 40% from the field, but they'd have like 20 more possessions than the other team. So like the four factors of basketball, if you ever like know about that, that's basically there are only four ways generally that you can impact a game. So the first one is a field goal percentage, so, and true shooting percentage, or EFG, excuse me. So whenever you shoot the ball, like the difference between the teams, who's more important, who's more efficient, that is one. The next is free throws, like how many free throws you get and how well you shoot there. Turnovers, and then rebounds. Okay. There's literally no other way to differentiate the score from another team. Okay, so you have to win at least one of those battles in order to win a game. Usually the team that wins most of the battles, right? But with a team like, when you look at the strategy of what I think that they're going to be trying to do off of the bench, is that they're not going to care too much about field goal percentage. So whenever another team is going to get inside, they're going to score, because there's not going to be any rim protection. You're going to have, Sandro, you're going to have CMB is actually pretty good down there, but like Mobo, you're not going to have a traditional rim protector who's going to be able to come up and just knock the ball away. That's generally how teams play defense. You funnel guys into the paint, and then your center is waiting for them in the paint. The way that they're going to do it is that they're going to try and overload the ball handler. They're going to try and force as many turnovers as possible. One of the problems with that strategy is that you can lose the possession more even if you create a million turnovers, because you can't get enough rebounds.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the vital things that a center does for a team is that they're the guy who just grabs the board and ends the possession. And with small ball lineups, one of the problems is that you don't have that guy. You don't have the center, the guy standing in the paint to grab you the boards. So if Mamu, even if he's not a good rim protector, if he can stand in the paint and just get boards, and the other guys can pitch in too, and you're getting like Jamal Shed blitzing pick and rolls, and you have like all these disruptive players off of the bench, Jacoby Walter, guys who are going to be really aggressively pursuing turnovers, then that's where I think that defense could actually be pretty impressive, is that you have those guys gambling. And then if the other team has to force up a three, that's how a lot of the time it works, is that like you can't get inside because you're pressuring the ball so much. Then they're like, okay, screw it, I'm just going to shoot a shot. You need a guy inside who's going to be able to grab the board. And if Mamu can do that, you know what? He's going to be somebody that the coach looks to. It's like, I got to end possessions here. I got to get a guy who can stop, who can get a board. And if he can do that, that's going to be huge for the Toronto Raptors. So just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I think Summer League was a good tease of, as you're saying, the way that they're going to play that like hyper aggressive on the defense and pressure. Like, and I think that actually helps cover up some of their weak points, because like if you don't let the other team set up in the half court as much, somebody like Grady can't get picked on too much. They won't have as many screens to set everything, right? So by keeping the high pressure on the ball handler, I mean, Jacoby Walter has already proven through Summer League, like he had like the 8 steals in the one game.
Yeah.
He can be very disruptive in passing lanes. So if you've got somebody like Jamal giving that 8-second pressure kind of thing,
CMB playing in the passing lanes.
Exactly, right. And then so then if they're getting up ugly shots, you got CMB, great rebounder, Mamu grabbing boards too. I think that they can potentially win their minutes in that way. And I mean, the whole point of the bench is to just win that possession battle back and forth. Just don't completely lose your minutes. And again, I don't think that the whole 5-out bench units, like nobody really does that anyway. So we'll have to see how they structure it, whether it's Scotty plus bench guys, IQ plus bench guys. And then you can kind of see how they can play with that, right? Because if you end up with Scotty plus bench minutes, there's a high chance that he'll be down on the low block anyway, helping rebound and helping add some rim protection as well, right? So, which is like what they did before when they ran him with Boucher as like the center, right?
Yeah,
and
same
Boucher
idea.
Exactly. He's small, he shoots some threes, everything, and those were tenable minutes. Like they were not so great offensively because of nobody really knew what to do, but defensively they didn't lose them too badly. So, I mean, I think it'll work. And then if you are at a place where you're like, oh wow, we desperately need some shot blocking, we desperately need some big, then you can try out Shamshay, who's a very good shot blocker, who will do well defensively, and then you'll just have to deal with his inexperience on offense and see how he can kind of fit into your system. That as him being as new as he is.
Yeah. I'm just going to actually mention, there's somebody in the chat here, Infamous, left a good comment, and that I think that I can address. He says that frantic pace is not going to work over a long season. It's conducive to many players getting injuries. And I have to point out that, like, he is correct. And I think that that is what happened when Nick Nurse, in that
Yeah,
final season, his last season, when he was struggling before they got the Pirtle, is that is an exhausting strategy to run
for
for a
sure.
full game. But we're talking about the bench here.
Hmm.
And Jakob Pertl is going to play 30 plus minutes a game, probably like 32 minutes a game, which means that there's going to be like 16 minutes where you can just be run this kind of crazy lineup with a bunch of reserves that, you know, you're not asking them to play a full game. You're asking them to play a lot of energy in those very short minutes that they get off of the bench. And I think that in that setup, I think that that could work. You know, I don't think that you're asking
And
guys to tax themselves too much.
yeah, I think so because you also have these players that are in the 11th and 12th and 13th man position where it's like I don't know if Ochai is pushed in that position or what or Mobo whatever, but it's like if you've got Shed, Jacoby, Grady, CMB, Sandro or something, right, as your starting thing, then you're splitting minutes with somebody like Ochai, who's started games before, is a very good defender. Mobo, very good defender, can come in. Jameson Battle can shoot and defend a little bit. And AJ Lawson, like you've got a little bit of depth with a bit more capable players than you had before, where you had like Castleton and
Yeah.
I liked Roden, but certain players that didn't necessarily fit in as well to that kind of defensive scheme. So even if there are injuries, it's like, okay, Jacoby gets injured, swapping him out for Ochai, how big of a difference is that defensively? Ochai is probably a better defender at this point, right? So they might be able to survive
Yeah.
if there are some injuries like that. And I do think that how Darko controls the rotations will help with that pace of that. But yeah, I mean, um, I expect a starter to get injured for a certain amount of 10 games, 12 games, and they'll have to do some shifting around, right? It's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
But hopefully they have enough bodies that can sustain it so it's not getting really ugly.
Yeah, I think like obviously you have to prepare for injuries and you have to expect at least a little bit of injury trouble, if not a lot. With that said, though, I mean, I think the point is well taken that having an up tempo and aggressive defense is a tiring thing that can add up and make minutes harder. But specifically when you're talking about the bench, I think that that is something that you can definitely do. But like, you're absolutely right that like that is why teams have centers, is
Hmm.
because they make defense easy. They're the easy button for defenses because they, as I said, end the possession with a rebound. They protect the rim, which is where the other team wants to score every time. They're the primary help defender. They just make it very easy, especially if you have a bad defender. Like the way that they used to, like anytime you have a bad, you know, perimeter defender, you're going to want to have a guy inside that is going to clean up the mess, right? Mr. Clean just comes over, gets rid of the shot, makes sure that you don't give up too much. That's kind of how, you know, the Utah Jazz with, you know, Spida and
Rudy.
Gobert, like that
Yeah.
was why that kind of worked well in the regular season, at least. But yeah, anyway, that's kind of what I'm feeling about Mamu. And we kind of got off track. Well, not off track. The discussion progressed and we talked about the bench, which I enjoy. I want to get to the last point here
Mhm.
because this is a link that that Steve sent me, and it's actually pretty interesting. So if you guys know Sam Vecini, he is one of the contributing writers for it's not ESPN. What is it?
Athletic.
Yeah, The Athletic,
Yeah.
and he's their draft guru. He's the guy that whenever they create a big board or whenever they want to expound on, you know, what the draft is looking like, he's the guy that they tap. He writes very good articles. He's very insightful. He knows a lot about the draft process. He did a very interesting segment on his podcast. So he has a podcast called Game Theory, and he and his co-host Bryce Simon did a 2020 NBA redraft. And what's interesting here is that they got into it, and my boy, Immanuel Quickley, was one of the players that they discussed. And it's pretty interesting where they selected him in the draft and then what they had to say about him, because it's, you'll be happy with where he was drafted and then maybe not so happy with what they had to say. But let's take a look at that real quick here. So Immanuel Quickley continues to be one of the Raptors' most talked about assets throughout the offseason, whether it's about his contract, high aspirations for improvement, or in the case of what I'm about to dive into. Oh, yeah, by the way, this is Raptors Rapture by Amos Caesar Mina, written very recently. So he gets into Game Theory podcast. They discussed Quickley. And here's what he had to say about Immanuel Quickley. So they drafted him in the redraft 9th overall, which I think is, that's pretty impressive. That was a pretty decent draft, and drafted 9th, that's not too shabby. So let's hear what he has to say. 5 years of really solid production is the reality. 2-time top 10 in Sixth Man of the Year. Over those 5 years has averaged 14 points, 3.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, shooting 42% from the field, 38% from three, 86% from the free throw line. Has consistently been around league average in terms of true shooting over the past 3 years, particularly 100th percentile in 2023 when he was second in Sixth Man of the Year, so right on league average. 99th percentile in terms of true shooting percentage in his first year in Toronto that he split with New York. Let's call him lower half starting point guard in the NBA. Okay, so that's his estimation of him. So there's at least 15 better starting point guards than Immanuel Quickley in their estimation. The numbers in terms of efficiency basically look the same in the 71 games he's played with Toronto. Looks like a lower half starting point guard in the NBA. His co-host said, I think the thing with IQ is whenever he's in the starting lineup, I don't love him as much. Whenever he's coming off the bench and competing for Sixth Man of the Year, stuff where he finished 2nd overall and 10th, I kind of love him in that role. So what do you think about that? Praise, or is it, a diss? Do you agree, disagree?
I think I took it as praise, because it's very hard to even be exemplary at anything in the NBA. So being an exemplary six man is not necessarily a big negative or anything. And he was in a great six man on some good Knicks teams that went to the playoffs and everything. His playoff performance was a little bit up and down, but I would take it as praise. They are essentially calling him overpaid, which I mean, until he proves that completely wrong, I get why from outside people would say that. Again, like if you're looking at it through the lens of you've paid a sixth man like a starter and you're trying to force that fit that a lot of things seem to think about quickly, okay, like I can see that angle. But I do think he has showed that he's best when he can be a guy generating his own offense and can be this little like microwave scorer and not have to worry too much about creating for others. So I think like we don't really have another option. He is de facto our best point guard, so it is what it is. But I think like yeah, if we ever have a point guard that's better than him, and he's as and you do have him as six man, that's obviously a very, very good team. If you've got a guy who is capable enough to be a just outside of the top 15 starting point guard as your backup, then yeah, you'd be an amazing team. How did you take it?
Yeah, so I understand where they're coming from. First of all, you have to examine things objectively. You have to see. Sports generalists are looking at a situation from the outside, and their understanding of the team dynamics may not be as nuanced as somebody who covers the team or is paying attention to the team 100%. And one of the things, like what they're saying about in terms of sixth man, it makes sense in a way, but in another way, I have a different philosophy when it comes to guards. And I think that the point guard position especially has changed a lot over the past decade. So one of the older schools of thought was that the point guard is the commander in chief on offense. He is the straw that stirs the drink. They are in charge and they make the decisions. And that still is the case with a lot of, and I still say it is the de facto thing. Like most of the time, the player that is the guy who runs the offense is the point guard. With that said, I think that the philosophy of front offices and the philosophy of teams is that playmaking does not have to originate in the hands of the point guard. And I think that that is something that is missing here, is that the role that he is being asked to play in Toronto is to be as a skilled scorer and a player who can do the other point guard things well enough. And the most important thing that he brings to the table is, and the reason he's getting the big bucks, is because he has, in my opinion, the most difficult skill and the one that is one of the most important for half court offense, which is off the dribble shooting. And one of the reasons, like, for example, in Denver, I know it's a completely different scenario, but they have a situation there where their point guard, Jamal Murray, he's not really a point guard. I mean, he's a guard and he plays the point guard position. He runs the pick and roll and he's allowed to handle the ball and do the things a point guard does. But the point guard on the floor, I mean, the guy who is clearly the maestro there is Nikola Jokic. What Nikola Jokic requires in order to be a high level, like arguably, in my opinion, and I think it's pretty uncontroversial at this point, the greatest pick and roll big ever, is that he needs somebody who can use his screens in order to shoot. That is how it's so deadly. It's not that Jamal Murray is the one who's like Steve Nashing it and finding all of these nifty passes. They are using him and his gravity coming around those screens to make everything else on the floor work for them. I think that Immanuel Quickley can do something similar to that. Obviously, that you don't have it in Nikola Jokic. That's a pretty big problem. But when you push the playmaking up the position level, so like Scotty Barnes, well, like Draymond Green, for example, Bam Adebayo, all of these, Domantas Sabonis, the bigger positions are getting a lot more of the ball these days, especially in the playmaking sphere. I think that's what's going to happen in Toronto. I think you're going to have Scotty Barnes. I think you're going to have Brandon Ingram. I think those guys are going to be doing a lot of the creation. So the breakdown ability, I think also back to the basket passing, I think screen setting, especially with Scotty Barnes, they're going to let Yak initiate the offense by, you know, holding the ball at the top like he likes to do and finding open players. In which case, that one skill where he's very, very good, which is that off the dribble shooting and catch and shoot, movement off of the ball, catch and shoot. That is where he's going to be, just make the offense look so much better. So I get where they're coming from. I get why they say he's a sixth man. I get why they're saying that they like him in that role. I think, I mean, glass half full here, Homer glasses on completely. I think he's going to be a surprise and a positive surprise for the Raptors this season. And maybe people will start to re-examine how their preconceived notions of what he brings to the table. What do you think?
I think I like that idea. I mean, I guess the thing is it's tricky because what we've seen from him is like coming in, being asked to do a lot without having built chemistry with Scotty Barnes yet, which is taking a bit longer, it seems, because they're in and out of lineups at different times, but they are trying to get together. Like they spent a lot of this offseason training together down in Miami. So that's really positive sign. And maybe he realizes, okay, we've got Ingram. We know that Scotty needs the ball and that he will sit back into that role. And when we've seen him take the role of, oh, I got to go score as if he was a six man, that's just because he's trying to fill gaps. And like when you're brought to a new team or you're brought to whatever and you don't know where you fit, you try to just do what you're good at. So seeing him do kind of like score first things for a lot of it, which is not, he's not bad as a score first guy, but the only thing with him is the wheels come off when he starts to drive too much and he's not great at passing out of driving lanes, and he's those kind of problems with it. But I think that there's a high chance that he will sit back into the proper role when everybody's role is fleshed out more and they have more time together. I don't think he's somebody who is trying to dominate the ball. I don't get that vibe from him. And I think he's going to recognize that and get off the ball to Ingram, get it off to Scotty while he curls around screens and pops out and everything to be available as a shooter. And hopefully he can create a lot of that spacing that they need. I just really hope that he's taking enough threes, and I hope that the driving is cut down because the paint will be a lot more clogged this season with Yak, with Scotty, with Brandon in the mid-range kind of area. So yeah, I think that he can be a tenable point guard on this team. Like we've seen, I've compared him to Tyler Hero in a similar way, and we've seen Tyler Hero and Bam
Yeah,
work,
that's
right?
that's a really good comparison there. The Bam and
So
Tyler Hero comparison.
yeah, right. So I mean, why would they not be able to kind of figure something out similar in an offense that is prioritizing similar things of not dribbling the hell out of the ball and getting off it and everything, right? So I think like yeah, I think could he be maximized as a sixth man? Sure, but he'd have to be paid a lot less and he'd have to be on a really, really good team. Like
Yeah.
but that's just not the situation. So I do agree that I think he will surprise a lot of people. At least I'm really hoping. And I think that that comes just with him settling into the right role and everybody as they're realizing, okay, the pieces are all together now. Nobody's having to be told to do too much or okay, Scotty, you're just the number one option. Go take 8 threes a game, whatever they were trying to do last season. I think everybody hopefully will be sitting into their proper roles and see how that goes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's expand just a little bit on the Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero thing that they have going on in Miami. And I mean, it's not like they're a premier combination where it's like, oh, wow, these guys are lighting the league on fire. With that said, I mean, Tyler Hero, all-star last year. Bam Adebayo has been an all-star. The synergy there is pretty obvious. You have a, you know, similar kind of scoring guard and a playmaking screen setting big. And those are two things that the Raptors have. I mean, Yak is obviously screen setting, maybe not as good of a playmaker as Bam, but has that in his game. And then Scotty Barnes, ditto. That's another guy that he can run a screen and roll with, another guy that he can play off of, maybe dribble handoff. Maybe Scotty Barnes uses his post game a little bit more and can, you know, find quickly on the perimeter. I just think that, you know, the skill is there and the skill ceiling of him as an offensive player who can do this thing that is in such high demand and really just makes offenses work in the NBA. NBA teams are searching for players who can do what he does, which is shoot the ball at a high level in a variety of different ways, in not just a standstill, you know, catch and shoot,
Yeah.
you know, off ball player. He can handle the ball going around a screen and pull up and shoot. I think even like, I don't want to paint him as a completely off ball player. I think that he has juice in the pick and roll, especially if he's getting a nice screen from either Scotty or from Yak. I think that, and another thing that I want to see from him this season, I think it'll be important, maybe not as important as the 3-point shooting, but I want to see that floater come back. I think that the floater was a huge part of his game in New York. That was one of the reasons that he was so effective is that, you know, a smaller player, you can't get all the way to the rim. You're just going to get kablamoed into the stanchion. So you got to have something that you can go to. And for him, it was that floater. And in Toronto, it just hasn't really looked consistent enough. So I want to see that.
The first thing I said when like, I mean, I guess after the initial reaction of the OG trade, but once we got IQ, I was like, we have a player who can hit a floater. Oh my gosh.
I know Fred
And
could never. That was
yeah,
like his
right.
big,
Exactly.
flaw
And
as
then
a
like
player.
all the so many guys like Scotty falling off with his floater and so it was like, oh my God, we finally have a guy who can hit a floater, and then it hasn't really worked out for him. So I don't think that it's like all of a sudden that's completely broken for him. So yeah, if that can come back, that'll allow him to make guys question it more on closeouts, because if he can hit them with a quick little step and get into the lane and get that floater up,
Yeah,
then
and the floater, like it opens up the drive all the way to the rim. Like you
yeah.
just have to hit the defender a couple of times with that, and then they're not retreating all the way to the rim. And
Hmm.
like for a smaller player, that is huge. You want the big to be in no man's land. Like you want them to try to guard multiple
Yeah.
moves at once so that they can't just hone in on one thing. Because centers in the NBA, like God, they are so big, so long, so nimble and quick. Like these
Hmm.
guys that they're putting out these days are physical freaks. You got to have some kind of craft. You have to have some skill, especially in the mid range. You can't be one dimensional. So that was a really, I think that we got some good analysis going there on Immanuel Quickley. I think that's pretty much what we had on the menu for today, unless you can think of anything else, a little tidbit here or there. Do you have anything else you want to talk about, or can I get into the kind of the stuff we want to promote?
No,
Because
we
that's
get,
also kind of interesting.
yeah, get right into it. Yeah.
Okay, so as you may have known, but if you're listening to the podcast right now, if you're not a regular listener, or if you didn't catch last week's podcast, we have a couple of new things going on. The first of which, the podcast is relatively new. This is the 9th episode, but we have two new outlets, two new social media things that we want to promote. First of all is the TikTok. We are going to be creating multiple TikToks every week, probably 4 or so. And it's just going to be fun. It's going to be light. You'll be able to catch it on YouTube too, but it would be nice if you could hit that up on TikTok if you have it. Also on Instagram as well. If you're not on TikTok, if you're on Instagram, we're going to be doing reels over there as well. Also on YouTube. And the other thing that we have going is a Patreon. That's right. If you want to be part of the Raptors Report Patreon, if you want access to merch, which we have, by the way, if you want access to some other goodies, like being able to message us, we're going to be doing some exclusive content. You probably seen like the bonus show kind of thing. We're going to be getting into that as well. If you want to be an early adopter and just get throw your name into the hat there, we'd welcome it. But that's pretty much it. We covered almost all the topics that we wanted to this week. So that's it for the podcast. So, Steve, I will see you. Well, we'll be chatting before that, but I'll
Course.
see you professionally in terms of this podcast next week. And I hope all of you will return and
Course.
listen to what we have to say. And as always, thank you for tuning in to Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors content. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.